On February 14th, the weather turned gently warm. The moment Yuan Yuan got out of bed, she felt countless invisible tiny hooks hanging in the air, drawing forth endless hope deep within her heart. Last year, Sister Lu had received piles of gifts on this very day: chocolates, plush dolls, cute notebooks. What lingered most vividly in Yuan's memory was a pop-up greeting card. When opened, a large cluster of rose-red paper flowers sprang to life. Though merely cut from paper, they looked vivid and lifelike. Noticing Yuan's envious gaze, Sister Lu had softly comforted her. Next year, when you enter middle school, you'll receive gifts too. Once you grow taller than 150 centimeters, you'll be a proper young lady. By then, you'll be beautiful as well. Yet on this year's February 13th, even though Yuan was certain she had grown to 153 centimeters, her hopes crumbled bit by bit. She waited eagerly from morning till noon, then stubbornly on through the afternoon. All around her, classmates secretly exchanged gifts in quiet, shy moments. But she was always left out. Being unwanted felt like a curse etched straight onto her forehead, an inescapable mark she had borne for years. School dismissal finally arrived, and Yuan's spirit faded completely, ready to give up entirely. Hey, Lin Yuan. She had already slung her school bag over her shoulder and reached the school gate. At the call, she slowly turned around. Take this. In an instant, Yuan forgot how to breathe. Someone was actually giving her a gift. What was more, it was a real living plant, not fresh flowers, admittedly, but a tiny potted cactus, small and utterly adorable. Carefully cupping the delicate porcelain pot in her palms, she whispered, "Thank you so much." The boy's face was backlit by the sunlight, blurring his features beyond recognition. She was sure she had never met him before. Could it be that she secretly had a secret admirer? The thought alone painted her cheeks bright red with embarrassment. "No need to thank me," the boy replied in a lazy, nonchalant tone. "I just thought this thing suits you perfectly." With that, he turned and walked away, his tall, straight back unrestrained and graceful, truly as elegant as a jade tree in the wind. Yuan thought to herself in sincere admiration. It was only after he vanished from sight that she began to ponder the hidden meaning behind his words. A cactus suited Lin Yuan? Cacti were covered in sharp thorns, and she had none. Cacti were a dull shade of green, and she was nothing like that. Cacti purified the air, a skill she most certainly lacked. How could it possibly suit her? She tangled over this strange comment all through dinner that night. Cacti were plain and unattractive, and she had never considered herself pretty. Cacti were rough and coarse, and she was far from delicate and refined. Tender, blooming flowers and prickly cacti stood as to opposite extremes of the world, much like the vast gap between her and those beautiful, popular girls adored by everyone around her. Realization crashed over her like a cold wave. She had been mocked all along. The so-called perfect match was nothing but a cruel taunt. While every other girl was showered with affection and sweet confessions on February 14th, all she got was a mean-spirited prank. Even gentle, mild-mannered Emperor Yuan burned with sudden rage. It was far too unfair. In a fit of anger, she swatted fiercely at the tiny cactus. But no matter how miniature it was, cactus remained a cactus at its core. A sharp cry of pain escaped her, alerting her parents, who were watching a health-preserving program in the living room. Her palm was disinfected and draped in thick gauze, swaddled like a rice dumpling. Her parents chided her gently, complaining that her carelessness had made them miss their favorite health lecture hosted by a renowned expert. Maintaining health is the most important thing in life, they sighed. Good health is the number one, and everything else is just desires trailing behind it. Holding her bandaged hand aloft, Yuan suddenly spoke in a quiet, firm voice. "That's wrong." Confused, her parents waited for her to explain, but she fell silent. She knew the truth deep in her heart. For young girls, especially someone like her, beauty was the true number one. Without that single leading digit, every other merit and quality amounted to nothing at all. The throbbing pain in her palm seeped into her heart. Her nose stung, and hot tears welled up in her eyes, threatening to spill over. Shenxia's grand home boasted 7 bedrooms in total. If he wished, he could sleep in a different room every day, rotating through the whole week with no one to question or restrict him. His parents were never home. It was not that their marriage was unhappy, they were simply relentless workaholics, holding high-minus ranking, demanding positions. Shen Ju still vividly remembered his childhood. When his parents had put him above everything else, centering their entire lives around him, but in recent years, they had slowly pulled away. They assumed he had grown up, independent, sensible, and obedient, a young bird with fully grown wings, ready to soar alone in the sky without their guidance. They truly thought far too highly of him. Among all the empty bedrooms in the vast house, Shenju favored the attic room the most. A slanted ceiling housed a large skylight, offering an unobstructed view of the brilliant starry sky after dark. One corner was lined with potted green plants, alongside old toys and picture books. His bed was covered in bed sheets printed with Thomas the Tank Engine. This small attic was like a time capsule, preserving every fragment of his innocent childhood. He tried to brush off his parents' neglect, yet loneliness lingered stubbornly in his chest. As a child, he had once thrown petty, childish tantrums, even daydreaming of self-harm or rebellion to draw their attention back to him. He had never acted on those reckless impulses, though. Deep down, he was just like his parents, ambitious and rational, unwilling to damage his own well-being for fleeting emotional comfort. He would never commit foolish acts that hurt himself as much as they hurt others. Speaking of foolishness, a certain silly, clumsy girl popped into his mind invitant. He had once seen her walk out of the girls' restroom with half her school skirt tucked awkwardly into her underwear. The corridor was empty, the bell already rung for class. He had frozen in shock, torn between quietly reminding her of her embarrassing mistake or snapping a photo to tease her online. Before he could decide, she stumbled at the staircase landing and tumbled down with a dull series of thuds. Instantly, his playful amusement faded into genuine alarm, and he rushed over in a panic, terrified she might have seriously hurt herself. He watched as she scrambled clumsily to her feet, glancing nervously left and right to check if anyone had witnessed her fall. A faint smile tugged at his lips. How resilient she was, tough as a cockroach. Hey! Startled, Yuan looked up to see a boy standing at the top of the stairs, his face hidden in shadow. Your skirt's not fixed properly. Dazed, Yuan reached down to check, and overwhelming embarrassment crashed over her. She wanted nothing more than to vanish on the spot. Hey you! He caught again. This time, she did not look back. She sprinted away at full speed, fleeing the scene in utter humiliation. The sight was too comical to ignore. Leaning against the stair railing, Shenju laughed openly. He memorized her plain, quiet features, recognizing her as a new first-year student. Later, he had chosen that small potted cactus and given it to her as a strange, impulsive gesture. Hunting down the boy who had gifted her the thorny cactus proved far more difficult than Yuan expected. He stood vigil at the school gate every day, staring closely at every boy who passed by. Standing for hours left her legs aching and weary. She squatted down to rest, only to quickly stand straight again, realizing how unladylike it looked to squat with her legs spread in public. Shenju walked towards the gate with the crowd and caught sight of her awkward half-squat, clumsy and awkward as ever. Could this girl never stop looking ridiculous? Hey, wide, teasing grin spread across his face. Yuan noticed the boy walking past with that odd, twisted smile, and a strange sense of foreboding settled in her chest. She stared intently at his retreating back doll. Straight, impossibly elegant. In an instant she realized the truth. This was the boy who had given her the cactus. Ew! She called out, rushing after him, her heavy school bag thudding loudly against her back. Shenju stopped and turned to face her, his smile still lingering, sharp and teasing enough to border on mischievous. Is it that funny? Yuan snapped, burning with anger. Very. He replied bluntly. Yuan Yuan seethed with frustration. She had never even spoken to him before, so why did he insist on treating her like a constant joke? With a huff, she raised her hand and patted his chest lightly. Her strike was soft and feeble. She had never once hit another person in her life. Yet Shenju froze completely, rigid as a statue. Watching his unblinking silence, Yuan's courage wavered and fear crept in. I didn't hit you hard at all. He remained motionless, panicked. She spun around and ran away, her school bag bouncing wildly behind her. Hitting him first? Was she simply asking for trouble? Shenju rubbed his chest softly, his laughter returning. If she had not loudly declared she had struck him, he would have mistaken that weak tap for a gentle caress. How fragile and weak this quiet little girl was. Yuan's parents never came home for lunch, forcing her to eat alone at school. The cafeteria was said to serve delicious meals, but her mother strictly forbade her from eating outside food. While other students laughed and chatted in groups over hot meals, Yuan was left to eat her homemade lunch in isolated, quiet corners. Her usual spots included benches beside the sports field, abandoned table tennis tables behind the water room, and the quiet lawn outside the music classroom. On this warm, sunny day, she settled on the secluded southern lawn, a spot rarely visited by other students at noon. Hey! The sudden shout made her jump, nearly toppling off the bench. Shenju reached out quickly to steady her. Are you clumsy by nature? Your balance is terrible. You're the one who's weird, Yuan retorted, too irritated to waste words on her rude tormentor. Why are you following me? I'm here to claim compensation. Confusion washed over her. You injured me, Shenju said dramatically, clutching his chest. Yuan's eyes widened in disbelief. Was he made of paper? I've got internal injuries. My veins and meridians are damaged. You have to make it right, he insisted with a straight face. It was obvious he was deliberately teasing her. Even slow-witted Yuan saw through his act. I only get 50 yuan pocket money a month. Her voice trembled with righteous anger, and Shenju nearly choked in amusement. Did he really look like a greedy thug demanding money? Don't be so vulgar. Money never fixes real problems. Vulgar? She was the vulgar one. Yuan glared at him, baffled by his constant need to belittle and mock her. Giving up on arguing, she opened her insulated lunch bag in silence. Her 3-layer lunchbox was expensive and finely crafted, with separate small cases for chopsticks and spoons. Shenju had always thought she looked plain and unassuming, yet her daily tableware was undeniably exquisite. The moment she lifted the lid, the rich aroma of home-cooked food filled the air, colorful and appeasing enough to make his mouth water. You hurt me, so you owe me a proper meal. This will count as your apology, Shenju declared, snatching her chopsticks without permission and digging into her food greedily. Yuan sat frozen in shock, utterly unable to comprehend his brazen behavior. They were middle school students now. How could someone still steal another person's lunch? She had only suffered food theft once back in kindergarten. Yuan's homemade lunches were always abundant and nourishing to meat dishes, 3 vegetable sides, a bowl of hot soup, fresh fruit, homemade yogurt for dessert, and a thermos of warm herbal tea. After that first shameless midday feast, Shenju grew thoroughly addicted to her mother's cooking and began dropping by every day to share her meal. Helpless, Yuan started preparing 2 portions each morning, lying to her mother that a poor classmate could not afford proper lunch. Moved by her daughter's kindness, Yuan's mother wholeheartedly approved and began preparing even more very nutritious meals. Shenju never knew he had been labeled a poverty-stricken student in Yuan's eyes. Is your mother a professional chef? He asked one day, amazed by the endless rotation of delicious dishes. No, but she wants me to eat well, so she taught herself to cook nutritious meals. Shenju's chopsticks paused mid-bite. Your mother truly treasures you more than anything. Of course she does, Yuan replied naturally. Doesn't your mother care about you? Not in the slightest. Yuan Yuan assumed he was joking. Shen Xia's school uniform was always crisply ironed, neat and polished, a detail no other boy in their class bothered with. By the way, is that cactus still alive? Of course it is, Yuan Yuan huffed. It would take an extremely careless plant killer to kill a cactus in such a short time. Aside from her impulsive slap on the day she received it, she had cared for it carefully. She glanced down at her fully healed palm. Why did you give it to me anyway? She vowed to snap back at him if he repeated his cruel joke about them being a perfect match. It's the longest minus surviving plant I've ever raised, Shenju said simply, licking his lips after finishing his meal. Yuan Yuan refused to believe his casual explanation, yet for all his sharp tongue, Shenju never told outright lies. I've had it for 7 years. She fell speechless, lost in thought. That night, she rushed to her bedroom and examined the small cactus on her desk. The pale green porcelain pot was indeed worn with age, far from a cheap, newly bought gift. He had given her his most cherished plant, nurtured for 7 years, to a complete stranger. She could no longer believe his words had been meant as mockery. While Yuan Yuan stared thoughtfully at her cactus that night, Shenju tended to his own collection of potted plants in the attic. His parents were away again, one in Europe and the other across East Asia, leaving their huge empty house cold and desolate. Yet for the first time in years, loneliness did not weigh on him. Sharing warm, peaceful lunches with Yuan Yuan had filled his dull days with quiet joy. Each evening, he simply cooked a simple bowl of noodles, then studied, cleaned his clothes, practiced the violin, and read classic novels until bedtime. Lying in bed at night, his thoughts always drifted gently to Yuan Yuan. She was not conventionally beautiful, but to him, she resembled a soft, fluffy teddy bear, warm, gentle, and endearing, even when she frowned and glared at him. He did not stay for the food alone, he stayed for her quiet company. Being with Yuan Yuan wrapped him in a peaceful, otherworldly calm he had never known before. Due to sudden rain, they moved their lunch spot to the covered bench outside the sports equipment room. Heavy raindrops spattered loudly against the sloped eaves. After finishing every bite of food, Yuan Yuan poured him a cup of warm health tea from her thermos. The bitter herbal flavor made Shen Xia's nose wrinkle, yet he drank it without complaint. Pretending to enjoy every sip, he feared offending her and losing his precious lunches. What's in this stuff anyway? Goji berries.